A last-ditch effort before winter hits for any sign of 5-year-old Jack Sullivan and his 6-year-old sister Lily. These volunteers split into 6 groups and spent a day in the woods of Lansdowne, the rural Nova Scotia community where the siblings were reported missing on the morning of May 2nd. The nonprofit group Please Bring Me Home made the trip from Ontario to coordinate people on the ground.
So this will be our side. We're going to follow it way down. Eventually, we're going to turn the river and we follow it up past Lansdowne Lake.
About 30 people volunteered to take part in this search, most of them family and friends, all coming together in the hopes of finding any clue that will lead them to Jack and Lily.
It's sad, very sad, but it's been 6 months and we need some type of closure to this case.
One focus, the area where a drone detected 2 heat sources late on May 2nd, just before midnight.
One appears like it could be small object sitting, just 2 heat signatures sitting close together near the water.
RCMP says an officer followed up, found nothing, and determined it was likely a bear, but this group wanted to be certain.
I'm not sure, but it may or may not be the drone hit where the infrared sensors picked up, just because I see a line coming down from up here and leads right down to our water. I'm not sure. I've got to confirm it later on, but we're just going to take note of it and do a special little search around here, especially just in case it is something.
Nothing was found in that specific area, but teams did find a few items of interest.
And it looks like it has like underwear, like it's been burned, and it's the t-shirts. So it's a unique design. So we took a picture, we sent it to the RCMP. They then spoke to family and they said that it's not something they recognize.
Volunteers also came upon a child's bicycle, a blue blanket, and an old geocaching kit with the children's stepfather's name in it.
That's why it's so important to relook, like especially before snowfall, and have a third party come and just take a peek. Not that we're no better than anybody else, it's just having a third party come look is so important.
But at times, it got tense. One property owner refused entry where there are signs for no trespassing.
Why are you trying to stop us from finding them?
You have what?
We weren't in the
Two
field.
very dangerous animals.
What animals are they?
2 rams.
A roller coaster of emotions for everyone involved, especially those who love Lily and Jack.
It'd be discouraging if none of it means anything. So I'm really hoping that something has turned up, evidence of something. Anything will do.
I do feel disappointed too. The main output I was looking for was finding the kids, and that's not what happened today. I do feel like we have more questions, especially with finding things throughout the woods.
The RCMP says none of the items found are relevant to the investigation, but with everyone feeling unsettled, the volunteer group now plans to bring in cadaver dogs to do continued targeted searches this week. Angela McIver, CBC News, Lansdowne.
They came back with boots muddy and flashlights low, determined to shake the land one last time before winter sealed off the search. About 30 volunteers split into 6 teams, fanning out across the ragged ridges and frozen hollows of Lansdowne Station. Hit subscribe and turn on the bell so you'll get first-hand updates as volunteers coordinate with investigators, cadaver dogs are deployed, and every piece of found material is tested with the care this case demands. This was not a loose gathering of curious onlookers. The effort was organized and deliberate. An Ontario-based nonprofit called Please Bring Me Home coordinated the mission, flying in experienced searchers familiar with cold-weather grid techniques and waterline sweeps. They worked in small, disciplined teams to maintain coverage while preserving scene integrity. A single misplaced footprint can erase a trace or confuse a scent trail, so teams moved with an awareness of forensic consequence as they canvassed riverbanks, forest margins, and the drainage systems that feed Lansdowne Lake. The volunteers split responsibility into lanes that were manageable on foot in late autumn conditions. Some teams concentrated on wooded gullies where brush funnels movement. Others scoured shoreline edges where flowing water might have carried or concealed evidence. A third group checked access trails and outbuildings that had been left out of earlier, broader sweeps. These volunteers were motivated by the same stubborn hope that fuels every community search, the belief that persistence can turn up what large, formal operations missed. The logic behind a final winter search is practical. Water levels shift as temperatures fall, debris shifts with storm cycles, and subtle items that once blended into wet undergrowth can become visible against a thinner, brittle landscape. Searchers also know that a dense volunteer effort, coordinated with police when possible, can surface overlooked footage, an unlocked gate, or a piece of material that, when passed to forensic labs, yield a trace that ties back to someone present the night the children vanished. The goal was not spectacle, but to methodically and respectfully check areas that either were inaccessible earlier or had changed since the initial sweeps. Please Bring Me Home's role in organizing and funding the teams was central. The group specializes in targeted second-pass searches, areas that official operations have cataloged but that benefit from renewed attention with new tools like handheld sonar, higher-resolution drone sensors, and teams that can spend extended time on tricky shorelines. Their presence is a common and often valuable complement to police work. They can mobilize volunteers quickly, provide additional eyes on the ground, and follow investigative leads that are public and permitted. The group coordinated closely with family members who requested rechecks near waterways, and they attempted to work in concert with RCMP priorities to minimize contamination and maximize the usefulness of any finds. The search concentrated on river corridors and Lansdowne Lake because earlier drone flights had recorded 2 infrared heat signatures that remained unexplained. Thermal signatures can be a breadcrumb or a false lead, a warm rock that cooled slowly, a hunk of animal mass hidden under a bank, or a human body that emits distinct thermal patterns, and drone-borne infrared is helpful precisely because it can flag anomalies that are not obvious to visual inspection. In the initial months, RCMP investigators had flown infrared-equipped drones over likely areas and logged 2 hits that warranted further checking. An officer later examined one of those infrared returns on foot and concluded, based on environmental cues and canine work, that it likely pertained to a bear. Wildlife signatures can mimic human heat profiles, particularly when animals remain still beneath leaf litter or in rock crevices. Volunteer teams revisited those exact coordinates because environmental conditions had changed and because multiple passes can either confirm or rule out earlier interpretations. The rationale is simple. If a hit was a bear early in the season, subsequent searches might find bear scat, fur, or tracks confirming the conclusion. If no wildlife evidence is found, the hit remains unexplained and requires further scrutiny. Volunteers moved deliberately through the drone-flagged zones with focused sonar scans along shallow banks and with boots probing likely entanglement points. They were mindful that thermal anomalies are temporal. Bodies cool, vegetation absorbs heat differently under changing sunlight, and recent human activity can create false positives. That complexity is why the charity insisted on sober, methodical sweeps rather than emotionally driven dashes into the bush. What the teams found during this winter operation was a mix of mundane objects and puzzling items that raised questions without pointing to immediate answers. One of the most striking discoveries was a burned t-shirt with an unusual design and pattern. It had been partially charred and discarded near a secondary trail. Volunteers thought the pattern looked distinctive enough to show to family members. Sometimes a piece of clothing is recognized instantly by relatives and becomes a crucial link. In this case, the family said they did not recognize the tee. That lack of recognition does not make the shirt irrelevant. It simply complicates its interpretive value. It might be a local cast-off, evidence of a past campfire unrelated to the disappearance, or it could be a thread in a later, connected story that requires laboratory testing for fibers or DNA. Beyond the t-shirt, teams recovered a handful of other items that, taken together, added texture to the search without forming a narrative. They found a child's bicycle abandoned at the edge of a drainage line and a blue blanket tucked under a bush. A geocaching kit was also discovered near a worn footpath, a small plastic container containing coordinate slips and trivial toys that enthusiasts use to mark caches. At first glance, a bicycle can be explained away easily as an abandoned toy left by children playing elsewhere. A blanket might have been left by a passerby or caught in bramble during windstorms. But investigators must examine each object because in missing child work, Even ordinary items can yield extraordinary evidence when tested for trace material. What made the geocaching kit immediately notable was one of the items within, a slip that contained the stepfather's name, according to the volunteers who recovered it. The presence of a name tied to a close family member within an item at a search site is precisely the kind of coincidence that cannot be dismissed out of hand. Volunteers flagged it to investigators and to family liaisons, and it was logged and turned over to authorities for analysis. But context matters. Geocaching is a popular pastime in many rural areas. Caches get created and maintained by a rotating circle of participants who may include local residents, relatives, or passing hobbyists. A name in a cache log could reflect prior, unconnected activity rather than contemporaneous presence near the scene of a disappearance. Investigators treat such overlaps seriously while resisting the urge to leap to conclusions. The kit and its contents were documented, photographed in situ, and bagged according to forensic protocols before being forwarded for examination. Volunteer teams also ran into the practical realities that complicate community searches, private property boundaries, and on-the-ground safety concerns. One property owner refused entry to volunteers, citing explicit "no trespassing" signage and the presence of 2 rams in a fenced paddock that made access hazardous. Private property rights are weighty legal realities that volunteers must respect. In some cases, owners willingly open fences to allow searches. In others, liability and safety concerns prevent access. Volunteers have to balance the moral imperative of searching with a legal and ethical obligation to respect property lines. The refusal of entry is frustrating for searchers, but understandable. It underscores the importance of police-led, warrant-backed access when potential evidence lies behind a locked gate. After the fines were handed to RCMP liaisons and to the family for review, the official position was cautious. The RCMP examined the recovered items and, after consultation with the family, stated publicly that the objects were not immediately relevant to the active criminal investigation. That assessment does not render the items useless. Investigators routinely archive such material for possible later analysis, and sometimes a small detail, a trace of fiber, a unique soil particle, a latent DNA fragment, surfaces only after advanced testing or after being linked to other, stronger evidence. The RCMP's initial judgment reflected an on-the-ground assessment. Nothing recovered in that first sweep constituted a clearly probative lead that could be acted on immediately. Investigators emphasized that negative initial assessments do not preclude reevaluation should new corroborating facts emerge. Undeterred, volunteers planned a follow-up using specialized resources. They announced that targeted cadaver dog searches were scheduled for the coming week. Cadaver dogs are highly trained and can detect the scent of human remains in situations where human senses or technology fall short. Their deployment is a significant escalation. If a canine indicates on an area previously cleared, it demands a careful, official examination with strict chain of custody and careful documentation. Volunteers and families see cadaver dog deployment as one of the most decisive non-invasive next steps. A positive indication would immediately refocus police resources. A negative indication, by contrast, would not necessarily end suspicion but would further narrow the search field. What do these developments mean? First, community-led efforts persist because official searches, large though they were, cannot cover every inch forever. Volunteers extend the reach and may catch what earlier sweeps missed. Second, the items recovered are ambiguous. They provoke questions without providing answers. The burned t-shirt, the bicycle, the blanket, and the geocaching kit are data points. Investigators will treat them as such, testing and cataloging them while understanding their probative limits. Third, the drone infrared hits remain inconclusive. Wildlife remains a plausible explanation for thermal anomalies in rural settings, and trained officers who checked the area previously concluded one hit was likely a bear, a conclusion consistent with the ecology of the region. Fourth, private property obstacles will continue to complicate volunteer searches, so ongoing coordination with law enforcement to obtain warrants where justified or to negotiate access with owners is critical. Finally, cadaver dogs may prove decisive. either by indicating areas for excavation or by failing to locate anything and thereby narrowing hypotheses. This final winter search is a poignant reminder of how difficult, patient, and methodical missing child work must be. Communities bring goodwill and muscle. Volunteers bring persistence and sometimes important finds. Police bring legal authority and forensic protocols. The combination can yield results, but it can also produce frustrating cycles of hope and null findings. For now, no found item confirms what the community aches to know, where Lily and Jack are and what happened that night. But the searches continue because every credible avenue must be explored before seasonal change obscures the ground. As volunteers prepare for cadaver dog follow-ups, and as forensic labs prepare to test whatever trace evidence may have been collected, the one practical request rings clear: preserve originals and pass them to police. Do not upload compressed copies to social media, where metadata is lost. If you saw anything even remotely connected to Lansdowne Station on or around May 2nd, a vehicle, a person, odd lights, or unusual behavior, write down the exact time and location now and report it to investigators. In cases like this, a single preserved clip, a time-stamped phone record, or an overlooked piece of clothing can be the hinge that turns months of searching into a solvable sequence. We will report verified updates on cadaver dog results and any forensic breakthroughs as they emerge. For now, the volunteers have done their grainy, noble work at the edge of winter, and the search remains alive, because in the absence of answers, persistence is the last refuge of hope.